another video for Between Pages and Places. I am so excited about this video. It is a reading vlog that I've decided to do where I reread all of the Twilight books in the month of October. I am kind of nervous because... Hold on, I'm just fixing my mic. I'm kind of nervous because the last time I read these books, I was 15. And that's like, and I'm 30 now, so that was like 15 years ago. So I don't know how I'm gonna react to them. I almost feel like I'm gonna be like, oh, so cringy with some of the wording and like the reactions. But I am super excited to read them again. And I'm excited to show you my feelings about them 15 years later after I've read them the first and only time. But yeah, let's take this journey together as I read the Twilight series 15 years later.
Hello everyone! So this is an update on my Twilight reread 15 years later, and I am currently 102 pages in. My book is slightly bigger because it's the one where it has like the original Twilight and then the gender switch Twilight in it. And I have thoughts, okay? I have lots and lots of thoughts. So, one thing, keep in mind, like 15 years ago when I read it the first time, really loved it, totally Team Edward. It was like I was the prime demographic, 15-year-old girl, hot vampire, thought of living forever appealed to me, loved it. And the idea that like a normal kind of plain looking girl would attract like this sexy hot vampire and we be together forever, that was totally like the fantasy. Complete demographic. I'm 30 now. And, lots of thoughts. One, I feel like Bella is really, really whiny. Like right off the bat, she like complains that Edward was mean to her on the first day, and then she almost like teared up in her car. And I don't know if it's because like I've grown up so much and now I'm almost kind of very cynical, but I found that to be really annoying. I was like, okay, he doesn't like you. Move on. Like, who cares? Like, don't let the fact that he was mean to you make you cry. That's just ridiculous. Like, why? I understand, she's 17, a teenager. Maybe she just wants to fit in and he was mean. But like, as a 30-year-old, I'm just like, nah. Like, why? Why are you crying about this? Please stop. I also feel like there's moments where she's like obsessed with him and she knows she's obsessed with him and she can't stop thinking about him. And it's like, it's bizarre because I feel like that's just so unhealthy and you're aware that it's unhealthy and yet you feel this way. I don't understand it. And I don't feel like I have students, like I am a high school English teacher. Like I see that how they act around each other, or when like they have a crush. And I don't think they think this way. They're not this obsessed. A lot of them just like move on. They're like, whatever, next person. So she's just so unhealthily obsessed with him. It's weird and bizarre and very toxic. I also feel like the way that Edward is portrayed is already very controlling. Like when she got sick from blood testing and he forced her to get in his car so he could drive her home. I'm like, you can't do that. You can't just pull her by her coat and force her into your car. Like, there's things called consent, and she clearly didn't want to. Hey, she clearly also didn't want him to carry her to the nurse's office, and he just kept doing it. And the whole time, she's like, this isn't helping my nausea, and she just lets him do it. So partially, it's like, you can't do those things, like consent. But it's also like, stop being such a people pleaser. Like, tell him to leave you alone. Tell him to not carry you. Like, I don't understand why you're just almost letting these things happen. Like, I feel like if I was her and I had all these guys asking me out, I know, it sounds whiny. It's like, oh, but they like you. I'm like, but if I didn't want that attention, I would have been like, stop. You're harassing me. Leave me alone. And she's just like not doing anything. She's almost letting it happen. And I'm just like, just tell them how you feel. And I guess it just annoys me because like when I read it the first time, I thought I was like, oh, she's so popular. It's great. But it's like, she clearly does not like that popularity, but she's still letting it happen. Like, it's okay to stand up for yourself. You know? I also really didn't like the relationship between Charlie and Bella. I felt like it was almost non-existent in the beginning. Like, yes, he was concerned about her when, she got hurt by the car and Edward stopped it, but like, other than that, I feel like they're just roommates, like ships passing in the night, you know, like he's hardly ever there. Like, I don't understand. It's just like, I feel like, you know, she's your daughter and she hasn't lived with you forever and now she's choosing to do that. Like, you should, you know, care more. I don't know if it was just the description of the relationship that I didn't like, or I felt like there could have been more father-daughter moments in there early on to show that he's actually happy that she's there. But yeah, so those are just my first thoughts from hearing it. I'm actually hearing the audiobook. And those are just like my first initial thoughts rereading this series. Just moved my camera too much. Oh, there we go. But I also felt like I wish there was more description. I do understand it's a YA novel. And I don't even know if it's necessarily a YA fantasy novel. I don't think they actually put this in the fantasy section. I think they put it in like the romance section because it's paranormal romance. So, and there's just not enough fantasy to make it a fantasy novel. But I think I wanted more description, more character development. But yes, those are my initial first thoughts of the first 102 pages. But I will, you know, update you on what I think about the other next 100 or so pages. But yeah, see you next with another update. Hi everyone, this is an update on my reading for Twilight, and I have thoughts. I've reached the point where she goes to Port Angeles with Jessica and Angela, and you know, Edward like kind of saves her life from being attacked by those random men, and I just feel like that scene itself was, I think, very well written. You know, the tension was there. Like, you kind of knew what they wanted, really, but I thought that was pretty good. But I didn't like how Edward, like, treated her after the fact. I felt like he was just so controlling. He was like, you know, almost like it just felt weird how he, like, told them. It's like, I really think you should eat, but in like she even described it as an authoritative way, which I was like, what is she, like why is he acting like her father? And then they were like in the restaurant and he tells her to drink more and she obeys. And I'm just like, what do you mean? Like, it irked me. And the way he like withholds information and he just like doesn't even give her an explanation. And she just takes it. I'm like, no, Bella, like, don't take this behavior. Like, tell him what you feel. And not just be like the obsessive, like, love-struck person, but like, tell her how you feel. And that irked me a little bit because I guess I'm older now. So I feel like, no, stand your ground. And I also didn't feel like I liked her friends very much because they just ate without her. And I'm like, so you weren't even worried that like your friend wasn't there, like you weren't gonna ask where she was or call her, try to find her, you just ate without her? Like, that doesn't seem very friendly to me at all. So that kind of bothered me too. And I honestly just feel like Jessica is so pushy and she gets on my nerves because it's like she's almost living vicariously through Bella. because she's like, oh, Bella got Edward, so we're gonna live vicariously. And I also feel like Edward has boundary issues, because there's that scene where he listens into Mike's thoughts to see how Bella is, and it's like, no, you can't do that. You can't, like, I understand you can't stop from, like, hearing the humming, but you can't just, like, focus on one's thoughts just to, like, I feel like there's a boundary there. Just because you have this power doesn't mean you should be using it whenever you want, however you want. Like, you don't have the right to someone's information all the time. Like, if she wants you to know how she was in gym, she would tell you how she was in gym. So it kind of irks me that he just does it without her permission. You know, that really bothers me, because I'm like, if she wanted you to know, she would tell you, you know. Other than that, though, like, it is, like, it's not badly written at all, but feels very juvenile to me just a little bit. I think because I've read so many other books and so many, more adult books, I guess you can say, like, more high fantasy, and this is, like, not, I always felt like this could have been fantasy, and it's not. It's paranormal romance. So I always thought that was kind of interesting, that it's not fantasy, even though I always felt it was, but it's not. It's not in the fantasy section of Barnes & Noble. So I just feel like the writing is it fits for the demographic of, like, a young adult, branching into that kind of that kind of genre. And it's very quick. Like, things happen very quickly. There's no, like, huge build up. There's no, like, complex political systems that need to be described. You really don't have to describe the setting very much because, well, I mean, it's Fort Washington. It's a real place. So really you don't have to super describe it. But yeah, so those were just some of my thoughts about the next couple of chapters, and then I will return with more thoughts of more chapters. And I'll, see you later. Hi everyone, this is another reading update for my Twilight reread after 15 years. And I'm kind of at the point where, like, the meadow scene has happened and Bella is finally meeting Edward's parents. And I definitely have some thoughts, obviously. So, one, I think it's weird that Bella didn't tell her father. Like, I understand why she didn't tell her father, considering, like, why would she? She's a teenager. Her dad probably wouldn't understand. But I still think it's just like, why wouldn't you tell your freaking father? Especially because he's a vampire. Like, what if she doesn't come home? Like, that's one thing I thought Edward was like, okay, I understand you're worried because obviously, like, you're a vampire. You can suck her blood and kill her. But, like, come on. Why wouldn't you tell your father? I also felt like the scene where, you know, she's, like, telling him, or he's telling her, like, all the things about him and how he became a vampire. I just thought it was weird that they did it, like, in a meadow. Like, why would you do it in the middle of nowhere? Why would you even go with him to the middle of nowhere? Like, that's highly irresponsible considering he's a vampire. And I just thought her infatuation with him, it wasn't real. Like, I don't feel like she really loved him. I just feel like she was infatuated with his strangeness. Like, he's a vampire. Of course you're, like, curious. But I just, like, you're a teenager. You know, do you really understand what love really is just yet? And I don't think she does. Like, I think it's just, like, this infatuation, and she's changing her whole life to be with this guy who, like, feeds off of animals and can't go out in the sun. And, oh my god, the scene where he is, like, sparkling, it's just like, you sparkle, man. Like, and then she describes his, like, thousands of diamonds on his skin. I was just like, oh my god. Like, you sparkle. Vampires are supposed to be scary. They should like burn in the sun. Personally, I think now, especially when I was obviously 15, I was like, it's weird, but it's okay. You know, and I think the most normal, or not normal, but the most reasonable reaction to Bella being like with Edward is Rosalie's. Like the fact that she's upset with her, it's like that makes sense to me. Because it's like he jeopardized their entire existence because he became infatuated with a human girl. Like, yes, I do think that's irresponsible. Like, you have a family to think about. How could you just do that? And everyone is fine with it except for Rosalie. And I'm like, I understand because like they have a secret to keep and he just like let her in. Well, those are my thoughts for that moment now. I'm still reading Twilight and I will continue to be reading Twilight and get to the next books as well. So I'll be back with another update. Bye. Hi everyone. This is another update on my reading the Twilight series after 15 years. Sorry about like the lighting. It is nighttime where I am right now, and this is when I'm doing the update. So thoughts. I finished Twilight, like the whole thing. And I think reading it now, I'd give it like a 3 out of 5. Mostly because I think what bothered me was how Edward treated Bella. I feel like he doesn't listen to her. Like, she's telling him what she wants, and he's just like, no, I don't agree with it. You're wrong. It's like, she's not a child. Like, she's 17 going on 18. I think she knows deep down what it is she wants, and I think it would be okay to listen to her sometimes, you know, like she's not an idiot. Like, she is a smart human being and she can make her own decisions, whether you agree with them or not. So that was like my overall, I mean, it is the first book and I always found it my favorite because it's like the start of the story when they meet and it's cute. But now that I'm older, I'm realizing that their relationship is not as healthy as I thought it was, sadly. Now, so those are my thoughts. Like, yes, I think I still like it because it is a part of my life. And it was the first time where I thought, like, I can become a writer because Stephanie Meyer, she was just like someone with a dream, basically. And she sat down and started writing. And I was like, oh, like, she didn't really have any, like, formal training, really. And so I was like, she was just a person that had this idea. I'm going to move slightly so I have more lighting. There we go. Who had this idea and she kind of just did it. And now I'm like, I could do that too. And then like put it out there and see where it goes. So that's why it's also kind of an important novel for me. But now that I'm older, I'm realizing that it is been like, it doesn't go into a lot of depth. And I feel like a lot of the feelings are very stereotypical for that age. And being a teacher, I don't feel like people feel that way, especially that age. Like, the obsessiveness that Bella had over Edward was very unhealthy. And I don't necessarily think that people would really act that way. Right now, at least. I don't think they have this sort of obsessiveness that Bella had for Edward. Also because he's a vampire and I think people would like people in our like world would be like, oh my god, you're a vampire, I gotta run away. And she doesn't do that. However, I also felt like Edward was very controlling and didn't listen to her what she wanted. And I felt the same way about Alice, especially when she was like making her up for the dance in the book. And she would like guilt trip her and be like, oh, you know, like I didn't get to experience this, so you should let me. And it's like, that's not nice. Like, don't do that to people. Bella's not comfortable with this amount of makeup, not comfortable with these shoes, not comfortable being like dolled up. That should be respected. And I don't think Alice does that. Which kind of bothered me.